Professor Colakoglu, let me come to you first. All overseas voting in the Turkish referendum end on Sunday, April the 9th, with the main vote due to take place on April the 16th. Now, around 3 million people are eligible to vote outside of Turkey. Almost half of them live in Germany. Now, Turkey has been sparing no efforts to chase these overseas votes, which has caused a bit of row with its European counterparts. How much do you think the overseas votes could influence the final result of the referendum?
Many surveys show that yes and no votes are neck to neck. So this is why the international votes, particularly the overseas votes, has become very important. And that's why then to campaigning, particularly yes campaign, try to become more active particularly in European countries. As you said, Germany and some other European countries having the hub of the international votes for Turkish citizens. So that's why they are focusing on that. But because of those campaigns in recent weeks and months, the situation has become more complicated because of the reactions from the local governments, from Germany, the Netherlands and others. So these countries are not very happy to see Turkish government officials, particularly ministers, are actively engaged in the yes campaign, and also these governments, also local governments, consider that these Turkish ministers taking parts of the campaign will or increase the further divide within the Turkish communities in those countries. So that's why international votes are very important for both camps in Turkey during the referendum campaign. But on the other, it has become an increasing problem between the Turkish government and European governments in general. So this is the situation right now. And also there is an increasing concern particularly for Turkish communities living in Germany, the Netherlands and others. This confrontation between two parties, Turkish government and others, will deteriorate and severe their situations there. So also they are not very, because of all these developments, Turkish diaspora are not very eager to vote or participate this referendum process and going to ballot box because of these some negative outcomes.
Professor Keskin, a recent overview of 28 public opinion polls by the Turkish news website T24 shows that while 12 predict a win for the no camp, 8 predict a win for the yes camp. How do you look at the comparison so far, and what do you think will be the kind of heated competition between the yes and no camp during the final round of the voting on the 16th of April?
I think, as you know, this campaign is going to head-to-head. Therefore, it's very important to have, this diaspora Turks, votes, and that's why AKP and JDP, Just and Development Party, basically was lobbying in the, in Europe, basically in general. Therefore, those votes are very important as well as in Turkey. But when we look at the last polls from the last elections, most of the polls in the past basically misled the public. After the election, we see the different result. This will be the similar one. I think this election will be the similar one the previous elections and previous referendums, and I think we might have a surprise in this new recent the referendum, which will change the Turkish politics next decade substantially.
So we do not.
Therefore.
Yeah, so we do not know really what's going to happen, and we cannot make that prediction based on the poll results at this moment. Professor Colakoglu, President Erdogan and the ruling Justice and Development Party, or AK Party, argue that an executive presidency will make Turkey more stable, considering the country is dealing with various issues such as regular terrorist attacks and the fallout from last July's failed coup attempt. However, the opposition parties led by the Republican People's Party, or the CHP, argued that that the changes will create a one-man rule by degrading democratic institutions and the separation of powers in the country. What do you think that a presidential republic will do to Turkey? More harm or more good?
Until now, it is not clear how system bring Turkey for Turkey's future. But usually those camps try to focus on the voters to persuade their campaign is good for Turkey for Turkey's next years. But also we need to keep in mind the system change will take into reality after 2 years by 2019 after the next presidential election for that. So now we can clearly say that Turkish society and also even the parties are divided too in favor of for yes campaign or no campaign. So it's very interesting time for Turkey right now.
Professor Keskin, just in case the yes campaign really wins out and Turkey really goes towards a presidential system, what will that have as kind of negative impact on Turkey's relationship with the European Union, which is already very strained at this moment?
In Turkish public, basically, the European Union, favorability of the European Union is getting less and less every day, and decreasing basically since the 2004 and 2005. Because of the economic development in Turkey and more independent foreign policy of the Turkey, more independent foreign policy not just from the Europe but also from the United States. Therefore, we see a lot of tension between United States and NATO-oriented countries in Europe and Turkey. With new presidential system and new constitution, actually it was going to be held in late 2018 and 2019, but as a result of the failed coup organized by the Fethullah Gülen, supported by the United States, and December 17 and 25, 2013 corruption campaign against the AKP government, basically, and they are holding this, this referendum earlier. This will substantially change the Turkish foreign policy. Turkey, especially Turkey, last several years, is having a very difficult time with United States and NATO and European Union. With new presidential system, I believe this will not be a dictatorship as New York Times or Washington Post or The Economist portray. This will be more democratic system, the different kind of democratic system, like many different countries around the world, different than the Western style democracy. But we might change the foreign policy substantially. As you can see, recent speeches by Erdogan, President Erdogan, basically. Of course, we will have some difficulties, obstacles. Turkey is not as independent as other countries around the world because dependent on the European Union, dependent on the United States military aid. Turkey, that we should remember, Turkey is the third important military recipient of the United States after Israel and Egypt. But on the other hand, United States and Europe is investing and has been investing in the Kurdish areas in northern Syria, northeast part of the Syria and Iraq. And as a result of this, Turkish public and Turkish state, Turkish bureaucracy, including the AKP, including the Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, most of the Turkish public, they are not happy about the US involvement and European involvement in the Kurdish issue. Therefore, Turkish public pushing the AKP to change the foreign policies. Probably we will see little over 50% of the yes vote, and as a result of this, Turkey will have a new negotiation with the United States and NATO and European Union in the near future, and we might change the certain foreign policy objectives related with China as well.
Professor Colakoglu, I want to pick up from that. As we have heard, the relationship between Turkey and Europe is on bad terms, and it's likely that this is going to get worse in the near future, if not in the long term. And some people are saying Turkey should look more to the east to have a stronger relationship with Russia and with China. What is your idea, what is your opinion on the future cooperation between Turkey and countries in the east after the referendum?
I don't think that this may cause automatic rapprochement with Russia and China if there is a yes outcome after the referendum, because when we look at the Turkish-Russian relations, now in recent weeks, Turkey can face some difficulties with Russia. Turkey and Russia failed to coordinate their policies in Syria, and also more importantly, Russia is giving support Kurdish-led PYD in northern Syria, and also very recently Russia declared PKK and PYD, and particularly PKK, is not a terrorist organization. This is a difference because this is a very harsh statement from Russia, and also very Turkish politicians and Turkish leaders get very unpleasant because of this statement from Russian side, because the European countries, the EU and NATO countries, stating PKK is a terrorist organization, but PYD is a partner in Syria. So it's very complicated right now. Depending on yes and no outcome, I think Turkey may consider their foreign policy orientation. But Turkey needs time to, how can I say, very radical change for foreign policy in the long run.
You.
We will see
Professor
after the end of the referendum.
Sure. Professor Colakoglu, thank you very much. And Professor Keskin, thank you as well for joining us on this discussion about the future of Turkey.